Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering human creativity. I'm Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Nita Baxani, who serves as chair of the Early Childhood Music Department at the Colburn School. Nita, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm so excited to be able to talk with you. Obviously, there's extraordinary work that's being done at Colburn. Colburn's one of our wonderful creative partners for the show, helped us to kind of co-curate this. And so what I thought first would be great is if you could kind of just share, what does the Early Childhood Music Department at Colburn do? Kind of what falls within the scope of the work that you do?
So the work that I do, I'm the chair of the Early Childhood Creative Arts program at Colburn School. And so I lead the early childhood program. So that means I oversee, I restructure, I revitalize the curriculum. And, the curriculum is an evolving sort of document that goes into practice that's constantly being updated, with I started at Colburn about 3 years ago this summer. So I had the freedom and the flexibility to take over the program from someone who had been there for 20 years and to sort of say, okay, where are we today? How do we update things? How do we make it my style? So along with actually teaching some of the courses, and we offer classes from about 7 months old, babies, up until about 6.5 to 7 years old. I'm also creating new courses and I'm piloting new courses and I'm sort of measuring them against sort of developmental parameters according to age parameters as well. And the other thing that is part of my responsibility and role is, Colburn School, it's not just early childhood, we sort of, go into other instruments and, we have classes for adults, but my job is also to see when children end early childhood, when they've finished their time with us, where are they going and how do I provide smooth transitions into other departments? So essentially, I'm developing those curricular pathways as well. Now, the most important part of my job probably is cultivating relationships with outside schools, with our community, with the parents, with the families, really with the children. And I become sort of a guide or a mentor, not only to my early childhood faculty, but also to the families as well. They come to me a lot. And I also work closely with the scholarship program coordinator to provide families equitable access to our program. That is also tuition free. And finally, a new thing that we're doing, and I'm always trying to create new things, is this weekend I am designing and co-hosting a community music program for very young people. So I'm working with Maxime Eshkenazi, who is the director of some of the youth orchestras there, and we're presenting sort of a concert for young people, including babies.
That's awesome. So, and thank you so much for sharing that. And it's such a clearly a wonderful breadth. And so I was curious, kind of, you were talking about coming in and, and thinking about some of the, ways in which you might evolve the curriculum. And just kind of as you look at this, we have many in our audience who are at institutions thinking about their own early childhood programming and curriculum. And are there any kind of either core trends or shifts that you've seen that as you look, you're like, this has really risen to be, this is number one, number two, most important as we look at the way we're able to impact young people?
Yes, absolutely. And so, not only am I the early childhood chair and I work with children very closely at Colburn School, but I'm also assistant professor of music at Cal Poly Pomona. And so I work with also the future educators of tomorrow. But I'm still a practicing researcher. And so for me, I'm constantly doing research. And one of the things when I go back to when I first studied this area, for my research, is I was thinking about musicality and communicative musicality. And I think the most important thing I think about is how we music together, meaning, Christopher Small's coined the terminology musicking as a verb. So the relationship building. So for me, that's first and foremost. And that has that is community, and that's what it's all about. How do we give voice? How do we hear voice? And what I mean by voice is, when you're working with children who are nonverbal, how do you listen to their cues? How do you be in the moment and sort of, you have your plan of what you're going to do, but be able to pivot in the moment to address their needs, and how to provide different entry points for each child so that they can come in and participate as a community, so that they can music together, because musicking is all about relationships, whether you're a performer on stage, in which I'm still singing, and so when it's whether with me and other musicians or me in the audience, but even in the classroom, where's that pathway? So research definitely informs what I do. And so being involved in a few studies currently right now that I'll be presenting this summer, I'm always taking that information, not just from my own research with my colleagues and mentors, but also going out there and seeing what else is out there. So in thinking about being in the moment, providing access to all learners, knowing that when they come into the classroom, it's not that we are teaching the students and saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. And that we are using concepts and skills. Yes, music is there, and we know how important music is and the arts, but also that we are learning other things in the classroom other than the cognition, right? Other than these skills and that skills and the music concepts, we're learning how to be together. And I think that's the most important part. How do you express yourself as a child and take it with you into adulthood? And how do you create this environment of musicking that is about sympathy, empathy, working together, being humans together, because these are our children of tomorrow. And the other aspect is, how do we provide that musical space that is inviting, that is inclusive? Remember, when there's no one size fits all, right? So we are all individuals with unique preferences. We have unique backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, linguistic backgrounds, and that goes for children too, including infants. And in my own research of infant musicality and their functions in music, they have agency, they have autonomy. And if anyone who comes and see how I worked with the very youngest, it's at the foundational level, they come in already with prior experiences and things to bring to the table. So it's not about, here's our curriculum, it's never going to change, here it is. It's, how do we create that pathway from the school to the home so that they're contributing? We're all social actors in that sense, right? This is a social act, musicking. That's what it is. So it's
So
about developing people of tomorrow, our humans, our future leaders.
I love this. This is absolutely fascinating. And so I'm curious too, especially with young people today, are there kind of the flip side of that? Is there anything that kind of has arisen that you're like, this is what seems to be the biggest challenge for us to be successful? And as I think about that too, I think technology. Is there anything with phones or anything or distractions, or is there any, as you look at the work that you're doing, is there one thing that you feel this is kind of one of our biggest challenges and how we want to try and tackle it?
I came to Colburn pretty much in the middle of the pandemic. And so, probably a lot of families were also hesitant to bring their children to classes or their babies to classes, but now as they're coming back in, it's also, I think, one of the challenges is just saying, okay, where are we with all this background with technology and what's happening, and how do we bring it back to sort of evolve into, wait a minute, let's go back to, how are we together, how can we be together, so that we're, children coming in is like, whoa, I have to be with other children, or I have to be with other babies. And sort of, how do we acclimate and still, again, take them from where they are and provide different entry points for them to come in? That means that as the facilitator, facilitating this environment, you have to really kind of get to know your families. You have to get to know what's happening at home and how to provide strategies. So yeah, there is a little bit of that going on as far as, sort of feeling more comfortable back into these musical spaces again that maybe haven't been around for them. When you think about some of these children, they've been at home, in a certain environment for a few years, and now coming out, like, how can we sort of generate that healthy well-being within a musical space?
Absolutely. Well, this is extraordinary work that you do. Unfortunately, we are just about out of time, but I always like to ask of all my guests, this work that you do, it's obviously, I think, so fulfilling. And both the learning process and how you're going to, build into these trends, and then also just the direct impact and engagement with young people. But there's got to be some tough days. And just wondering on those as kind of a leader, how do you kind of go through those toughest times? Do you have any mechanisms or things that you find really work for you when there's significant challenges to overcome?
Yes, I mean, life is messy, right? It's how we go through it. Life is also wonderful. And I think it's always knowing your why, knowing why you're doing something, your purpose, coming from, I'm an immigrant, so I know my purpose. And for me, hearing voice or being able to express is important. So I want to be able to hear young children's voices, even when they're nonverbal. When I think about my why, right? Know your rationale, be willing to learn and always be inspired by others. For me, it's also being aware, always in the moment, and being authentic to you. And definitely I do a lot of meditation because then that's the only way I can continue to be authentic as any decisions I make, sort of make from here on out, but also so that I can just, in those hard moments, I can still say, okay, I know why I'm doing this.
Wow. Nita Baxani, you truly are one of the arts engines who is powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you, Erin. Thank you so much for having me.